Welcome to the Stray Dog Film Lounge, with three stray dogs that bonded over our love of movies.
I'm Colin,
My name is Ross.
And I'm Ian.
and this week we are first going to be talking about
Ian's recommendation, which was
Watchmen.
Watchmen.
And I watched the 3.5-hour cut of it.
I watched the 3.5 hour cut too, because I am loyal to this podcast and I'm loyal to our fans.
I watched the theatrical cut, but I read the first 3.5 chapters of the graphic novel, because I hadn't read the book at all. So that's something.
Okay, so Colin, I know you have thoughts, and I'll probably be the only defender of this movie. So, Colin, unleash your hate.
So, I first saw this film when I was in 4th grade, and I thought to myself, wow, this is the greatest movie ever made. I love this. I even dressed up as Rorschach for Halloween when I was in 4th grade, which unsettled a lot of my elementary school teachers. They were very concerned. But I read the graphic novel when I was in high school, and even to this day, I can say without a hint of hyperbole or hesitation that it is in the top 10 greatest stories ever told. I think Alan Moore's writing of the graphic novel is just so masterful. The characters are just so complex. It's so well thought through that I would say, like, if someone told me what's the greatest story ever told, I think Watchmen may come to mind for me. So I watched this film again, and I watched the ultimate cut, and I think Zack Snyder just totally fumbled the ball with this adaptation, and that he's quite possibly the worst director to adapt the source material.
Damn.
He's directly copying a lot of the panels, but he's totally missing the point in every other aspect.
Totally missing the subtext. I really think Zack Snyder would be a really good DP.
No, he isn't. He shot
You showed Army of
what's
the
that?
Dead.
Army of the
but-
Dead, and that movie looks like shit.
No, that movie that looks great.
It looks murky.
I love that look for it.
All right.
I think for me, if the cinematography if it helps the story in some way, I kind of feel like that kind of cinematography helps it. But anyway, Colin, continue here.
Zack Snyder, good visual stylist.
Mhm.
I would totally have him shoot a commercial for my brand or a music video for my band. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
he's great.
he's good at visual style.
And he seems like a cool dude.
He seems like a cool dude.
He seems like a very friendly jock.
I could have a coffee chat with Zack Snyder, totally.
Yeah.
I totally could, despite my overwhelming hatred for this movie. The thing is, he just totally misses the point. This movie is the definition of pseudo-intellectuality for me. This is a movie that thinks it's way smarter than it is. And whenever I hear people praise this movie, it's because of the source material.
Yeah.
It's never because of the direction or the acting or anything like that. Like, this movie is just this shell of the graphic novel, which has basically all the bones of it, but no meat to it. All in all, hate this movie, would not watching it.
All right. Here's my take. Is I'm kind of distant from Zack Snyder. I'm kind of distant from comic books and stuff. I like Marvel movies. Well, I liked them for a long time. That was the most I was into. The first few phases of MCU was the most I was a comic book fanboy. I don't read comic books much, but when I knew when Ian recommended it, and I knew that most of the previous critiques I'd heard of the movie is that it directly copies the source material while missing the point, I figured, oh, well, I better read the source material so that way I can see if that critique is true. And also so that way I can say that I read it, and then you guys don't have to be like, yeah, well, in the comic,
That's my job.
Yeah, so I didn't have time to read the whole thing, but I sought out the comic book via PDF because the library was closed, and I read the first 3.5 chapters, and it's really good. And I think the Watchmen's strength is in its world building and the way it makes it feel like that this is like so fleshed out that it's like a real world, and it's just being depicted as comics, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to like as opposed to just being a comic book story. Like it feels
Sure.
bigger than that, and we're just
Yeah.
seeing it through a lens of comic bookiness because it also has those like interludes of like Hollis's autobiography and stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
that really like fleshes it out.
Yeah.
And then Zack Snyder's adaptation, it just feels fake. Everything, it's just like a movie. Like it doesn't. It's just like it's using the dialogue. It's copying a lot of the panels. But like the things he chooses to add like the needle drops are stupid.
The score is terrible for this movie. The score is
Oh,
so
I disagree
sappy.
with you on that
I
so
hate
much.
this score so much.
I'm gonna get into that.
The costumes look cruddy and rubbery. The way they depicted Rorschach's mask as constantly morphing bothered me. I get what they were going for because it does change on each panel of the comic. So I get the logic of like, oh, well, what if it's constantly morphing every second? But I mean, the way I would have done that is like just have him wear a different mask each scene would have been a better way to translate that for film, because it was just a visual flair without thinking it all the way through, you know?
Yeah.
Like the fact that it's like, oh, it's changing all the time because you can't get into it, but it's like, how is that actually working technically? And that adds to the fakiness of it. It makes it feel less like a real world. Like I'm more likely to accept the existence of a Dr. Manhattan than I am willing to accept the existence of a cloth mask where the ink on it moves around for some reason.
Because
Okay.
Rorschach is such a grounded character.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's basically Batman, right?
What I love is that Night Owl and Rorschach is like if you divided Batman in half.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
that is kind of interesting.
It's
Yeah,
so
that is
cool.
because there aren't really any like direct equivalents, which is kind of neat. About like he's like Dr. Manhattan's kind of referred to as Superman, but he's not really Superman at all.
He could totally destroy Superman in a second.
Oh, he could destroy
Right.
anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like he's the most overpowered character.
But yeah, but like the things he adds are like the slow motion's dumb. The rape scene, like the moment leading up to the rape scene where it's like a close up of her boobs, I thought was so tasteless.
Yes.
That's a perfect example of like totally missing the point of what this scene is trying to say.
It's gotta look epic.
No, but like, why are you showing why are you showing titties? Like, are we supposed to be
Are we supposed to be on the comedian's side?
like? Yeah, do you want us to be on the comedian's side? Do you want us to ogle at her the same way the comedian's ogling at her? Like, I don't get it. It's weird. I don't. Yeah, it's stupid because like it's not like he's copying a frame of the comic with something like that. That's not in the comic.
Mhm.
I read it yesterday.
Yes.
I remember.
Yes.
Well,
And then like another thing is like while I did read the first three, I did skip around go skim through the comic while watching the movie to see how it's depicted. It's like when Rorschach is killed and his blood splatter is in the shape of a Rorschach test. That's ridiculous. That's not in the
I love that.
that's not in the comic book. Like everything is given so much visual importance in this movie. Like it's so cool and badass. When like in the comic, everything feels like futile and insignificant, and that's kind of the point, you know.
Yes.
Anyway, Ian, defend yourself.
Okay, so I'm gonna start a little bit like Colin, my little backstory with this. So when I want to say like I was 15 or 16 when this came out, and I didn't see it in the theater, but I saw it on like HBO. And I, again, thought it was like the most badass thing I'd ever seen. And then I read the comic because that's what the graphic novel got me interested in reading it. Obviously, the graphic novel is better. Definitely.
All right, I'm glad we agree.
You don't say.
I agree that he doesn't understand the comic But I will say for what he does, and this is at least just for me, it takes itself so seriously that it borders on parody and campiness. That the amount of gore and blood and nudity and just these gratuitous slow motion shots everywhere. As 27, looking back on, when I was 15, 16, I laugh at the fact that there's like an overabundance of this gore and all this like ridiculous shit that doesn't have to be in the movie and it doesn't make any sense, but it's something that I still get enjoyment out of, and it's something that it still feels like a comic book come to life for me.
Yeah.
The subtext is completely wrong, but I'll say that I love the performances. I think Jackie Earle Haley completely steals it for me.
Which one's he?
He was Rorschach.
Oh, he's Rorschach.
And
Yeah.
I forget who plays Dr. Manhattan, but
Billy Crudup.
yeah, Billy Crudup, he was great.
They did a really good job at casting actors
Mhm.
that are the spitting image of their comic book
Yeah.
equivalents.
Except Matthew Good as Ozymandias.
I'm going to disagree with on that.
Matthew Good as Ozymandias is terrible. That was a terrible casting choice. They got this skinny boy with these really weird vocal inflections. I didn't know what accent he was going for. And, like, he wasn't charismatic at all.
And also, what's her name? The love interest lady.
Malene Ackerman.
Yeah, but what's the character's name? Lori?
It's
Lori.
Silk Spectre 2,
Yes.
I think.
Laurie Jupiter.
Too many names. Anyway, yeah, Lori, I feel like in the comic, Lori had a bit more of like an attitude.
I think that's because of a performance rather than the writing.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
this.
Like that's what I'm saying. Is like
Mhm.
I don't feel like the performance did that character justice. She's just kind of, I felt like she was just there because she's hot.
Yes.
Like she wasn't casted based on her acting.
Because she was a model. She was a model. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that I really enjoy is the theatrical cut definitely cuts out the fat of everything because I watched the ultimate cut as well. If you're going to watch the movie in any way, watch the theatrical cut because it's shorter, gets to the point, and even though it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, it still feels quicker than the 3.5 hours that Colin and I went through.
Isn't the director's cut just like 3 hours?
No, the
Or
director's
is it-
cut is 3 hours and 10 minutes.
Okay, so that's like a middle ground.
Yeah, if you want.
What's in the extended cut that's not in the theatrical? Like, is there anything significant that's like worth seeing?
Not really. It's just
the same thing but longer.
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
best way to put it. It's just the
Yeah.
same thing but longer. And
Like, there's no entire scenes that are cut out.
no.
Oh, yeah, there are.
Oh, there? I
Like,
can't remember.
is there the newspaper man and the kid who reads the comic books?
Oh yeah, that shit.
I remember that from the comic book. That wasn't in there. Yeah.
And they do it no justice. They do it no justice. Those characters are so flat in the movie, and they're so deep in the comic book.
I agree with that. From what I've read, I like them. I like that moment.
I like them a lot.
I think for me, and I will say like my favorite scene in the whole thing, that always gets me because I'm like, oh my god, this is so good, is the birth of Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, I think that too. And also, that's probably also my favorite part of the book from
Yeah.
what I've read so far.
Yeah.
The movie cuts it in a similar way to the comic book, which I found very cool. Like that way it's going back and forth from time to
From
time.
him building the clock on Mars to...
And
It's such a beautifully crafted sequence, both in the graphic novel and in the movie. And the score in that scene, Colin, is amazing. It's not as memorable as a lot of different scores, but at the same time, I enjoy the music that's in it. Not the songs that come from established artists.
Not the needle drops.
Yeah, the needle drops are done and all that kind of shit. Or when they have the rise of Valkyrie in the fucking Vietnam segment.
Where'd they
get that
from?
Oh god, the Rise of the Valkyrie scene was so... That's another shot that's not in the comic book that's, like, ridiculous.
It's, again, I feel like with the
Yeah.
movie, it's more about it looks so badass. That's the
Look
kind
how
of
badass
thing
this.
that
Look how badass it is seeing Doctor Manhattan kill these poor Vietnamese people.
it's. But the thing,
Like, yeah, it's
It's
so
terrible.
stupid. It's so terrible.
It's
It's so
so
terrible. Yeah.
stupid.
but I feel like in the shots or the sequences that really work, it's incredible. Like the opening of the movie when spoilers, movie's been out so many years, and same thing with the
It's
graphic novel.
okay.
Okay, when the comedian gets killed in the beginning,
Yeah.
um, just even the slow motion, fast motion, I didn't mind. When he gets thrown out of the window, I'm just like that. It's fucking amazing of how it looks and sounds and feels, and I get it.
Not in the comic
Yeah,
either. That's kind of
it,
neat. Yeah.
it's something that I
Yeah.
really there are segments in this that I feel like visually are better than the graphic novel. Not in the writing, or the context, exposition, or whatever you want to say, but I think visually the movie,
Well, because I mean, it's a movie with
yeah,
cameras and computer effects and
And a
and widescreen.
$120 million budget.
no, I think it's
That
more
is a
than that.
lot of money.
It's definitely more than
No, that's
that.
what I looked up.
Um,
It's $120 million.
I'm actually very curious to learn how they made Doctor Manhattan. Like,
oh, I know how to do that. I know how they did it. So
how'd they do it?
they put on a bunch of blue LEDs with motion capture shit on it and on the actor.
Oh,
So that's in every scene they were able to light him as if he would be Dr.
so
Manhattan.
is he walking around naked or is
No,
he
he's not
in?
walking around naked. He's walking
Is
around.
he in like spandex?
He's like in his own clothes, but they have all the motion capture spots on him.
It's like normal performance capture tights,
Hmm.
but with glowing blue dots instead of.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's really cool looking. The behind the scenes for the movie is it's really interesting of how they pulled off a lot of the effects.
Do you think his penis is modeled after the actor's penis?
And maybe Zack Snyder's, I don't know.
I think
That
it's
was-
modeled
that's
after
the
Zack
same.
Snyder's. Yes,
But
that's what I was
I
gonna
think-
say.
So are you telling me Zack Snyder is uncircumcised?
Hmm.
But I will say too that I did, after watching the ultimate cut of this, I did watch the theatrical one, and I watched, because I'm not a huge fan, or actually no, I fucking hate the theatrical cut of Batman v Superman, and that's a story for another time. But I rewatched, like, sort of, because this is the ultimate, and has like everything, and then I watched the ultimate edition of Batman v Superman, and everything's really solid up until the third act. I kind of feel
Hmm.
like those first two acts are definitely a lot better than most of the ultimate cut of Watchmen.
Yeah.
I still have issues with it. Obviously, that could be a topic for another time, but it's something we're seeing how he evolves or what he does with comic book movies is interesting, because I think this was his first comic book film, and then he did Man of Steel and then all the others.
Yeah.
But
Well, wait, no, isn't 300
oh
a
yeah, what am I
comic
thinking?
book?
300.
Yeah.
I wasn't
It's
a
a Frank
fan
Miller
of that.
comic, yeah.
I
A
wasn't-
comic book that Alan Moore is very vehemently against.
Yes, because Frank
Interesting.
Miller did it.
But also, it's just so grossly historically inaccurate.
yeah,
And
that's
I
another
think
thing.
Alan Moore's a real stickler for detail.
Hmm.
I wanted to bring this up. Alan Moore and Stanley Kubrick, they're kind of similar figures in many ways. Like, I feel like Stanley Kubrick's more friendly, but no, definitely not. No,
No, of course
actually,
not.
Actually, when I think about it, Stanley Kubrick is a little like, if you watch some interviews with Stanley Kubrick, he does seem
He seems
kind of
like
like
a fun
chill
guy.
He seems like a fun guy. When you watch some interviews, if
I'd want to get a burger with Stanley Kubrick.
oh yeah, he'll make you one too.
Yeah,
he
he'll
loves
make you
making
one, yeah.
burgers.
I watched
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
making of The Shining and him bullying the fuck out of Shelley Duvall.
Oh yeah, it's a tragedy.
So
It's
I'll
a
have to look
tragedy.
at more interviews to
Yeah.
see how he is. But
But
I
maybe like younger Kubrick. He seems a little because he did more radio interviews when he was younger.
Hmm.
Yeah, he did. He did a
And
lot
then-
of documentary filmmaking
Yeah, so
And-
he's like he seems like he's just a New York Jewish guy.
from the Bronx. Yeah.
Anyway,
but what I was gonna say is that I feel like Kubrick would have been the perfect director to direct Watchmen.
Well,
Because throughout all of his movies, there's this constant theme of mankind's advancements in technology bringing about its downfall. And that's pretty much Watchmen in a nutshell. So,
and wait, should we? And also, you just reminded me. There's like a straight up Doctor Strangelove homage in this movie
Yeah.
that I'm pretty sure was not in the comic.
No.
Like they make
Yep.
they make the War Room look like the War Room from Doctor Strangelove.
Also, they make Richard Nixon look so fucking ridiculous in this
and
movie.
it's great.
it is not a good makeup job. They
It
did
is a
to make
Great
that guy look
because
like
it's
Nixon.
Nixon.
And he gets way more screen time than
And he
he does in the comic.
should.
Yes, he really does. And it's a terrible performance.
I think it's a
Yeah,
riot.
it's like not a.
Laugh riot.
They couldn't. There's got to be like professional Nixon impersonators that look like Richard Nixon,
Oh,
right?
But
Like, there's got to be.
even when like Anthony Hopkins played Richard Nixon in the Oliver Stone movie, like they didn't do a lot of makeup on him, but like you clearly felt like he was Richard Nixon because he's Anthony Hopkins and he's a great actor.
I mean, if he's not the main character, you got to make him look like Nixon so everyone's on the same page. That's Nixon.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah.
Or you could just say fuck it and just say different president altogether.
Overall, this makeup in this movie is really bad. Like, the makeup on Carla Gugino, who plays Sally Jupiter, Laurie Jupiter's mom, looks terrible.
That, I'm going to say, was pretty bad makeup.
And in the comics, she's such this old, decrepit woman who just seems like such a shell of a person. And in the movie, like, she looked like she's in her 50s. You know what I mean? Like,
Not even, like, close to what she's supposed to look like in the comic.
not at all.
I will say that I feel like her read on the character, that actress for the old one,
Mm-hmm.
actually did kind of make the character make more sense to me. Like you're like, because in the comic I was like, you're a rape victim. Why are you like happy with this? But in the way like she performed it as like kind of like what's this shit? You know, like that's kind of her whole vibe is
Oh, you know what?
You know.
The one
This kinda
scene
works.
that I don't remember, I don't think it's in the theatrical cut, was when the original Night Owl gets killed.
Yeah,
That's
that's in the
sort
Ultimate
of,
Cut.
yeah, that I really liked. That was another really fun sequence where it's sort
Oh,
of.
that happens. I haven't read all the comic yet.
So, do you want me to spoil it, or do you?
Nah.
Yeah, read the just.
I want to read
Yeah.
it.
This
Yeah,
is a
it's really good.
podcast about the Watchmen, Ross. We're gonna talk about the spoilers of Watchmen in the Watchmen
All right,
podcast.
fine,
Okay,
fine,
good.
whatever. Okay.
So basically, when he in the movie, the way they do it is this gang that bullies the kid reading the Black Freighter. They find where the original Night Owl lives, and they basically beat him to death. But he has a pretty good fight, and it like cuts back to when he was like back and forth when
In
he
his
was
glory
in
days.
his glory days,
Yeah.
and I just felt like it hurt so much to see him go after that. Like that was another great sequence that I definitely get why a lot of people don't like the movie, including Colin.
No,
But
no,
I
I love
just-
this movie.
I just think that like it's fun for me because I still get the enjoyment out of it. I read it now more as a parody than I do something to take super seriously. As I
Yeah, I mean there is a satirical element to the book.
there was a video essay I saw that compared it to the 60s Batman show, and I think in a lot of ways that's true. And especially of how overly serious everybody is. And the same thing with that is like Adam West treated that role so seriously, giving it 100%. And the same thing with this.
That's still different because the Batman show they were definitely writing for laughs. Like
Yeah,
the
but
writers
still,
were doing
the
comedy,
way that they do it.
but Adam West plays it so straight.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like, everybody plays this straight. There's nobody who's in the movie that understands the movie that they're in.
I kind of disagree with that.
Well, certainly not the actor who plays Richard Nixon. He's hamming it up.
Well, no, it's not even about like playing it straight or not. It's just like a matter of like realism. I never felt like these people had an inner life. It just felt like people reenacting scenes from a comic book. Whenever they were talking, it never really felt like that was coming from them. It just felt like a performance. I never felt like I was watching people. You know,
I agree with Ross, except for the performance by Patrick Wilson. His performance as Night Owl truly felt like it had an interior life, and he really made the actors playing Glory Jupiter look really bad.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, but also like, I mean, Jack Earl Haley like is good as Rorschach. He looks like the guy. He, you know, the voice is funny.
Rorschach's Journal,
but like
1985.
Yeah, it just never. I don't know. There just wasn't like a groundedness to it, and that might also be because the way it's shot, like him jumping on roofs, just felt so phony.
Yeah, or when he uses like bat gun to go up in the comedian's apartment,
that's not a thing in the comic, is it?
No, it's not.
They never really explain in the comic how he gets to places. He just kind of shows up, and that's sort of the bit.
And that's what's so cool about him. That's what's really cool about him.
I don't want to know how he gets to places. It's just funny that he can show up no matter what. Like, he just shows up in, what's his face's house. He just ripped the lock off. He's like, yeah, I ripped the lock off.
I ripped the lock off. Help myself to some beans.
I love how he doesn't take a code from Night Owl when when they crash land in Antarctica.
Yeah.
He says like,
that is pretty funny.
It's so cool. He's like, yeah, I'm warm enough. You know what I mean?
That's kind of the character's whole deal, is that he's like just very set in his ways.
Yes.
He hates change so much.
One other scene I want to talk about. Colin might have something to say about this. Is Rorschach's first kill in the movie and in the graphic novel. They're both pretty different. In the movie, you know, he kills the pedophile child murderer, you know, with the meat slicer or the little axe thing. I don't know my kitchenware. But when he does that, I didn't mind it so much in the movie. And I know from what I can remember in the graphic novel, he just burns the place down instead. What did you think about that?
What's really interesting in the graphic novel is that he ties him to the building. Mm-hmm. He gives him a saw, and he starts burning the building down, and he's like, you can escape if you decide to saw your arms off. And so, like, he gives him a choice, but he also punishes him. In the movie, it just doesn't make sense for the Rorschach character, in my mind, that he would just, like, give in to his emotions and just start hacking this guy up. Like, that just...
Yeah.
It's
just like, just look how badass it is that he's killing this pedophile.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Not good.
But then again, killing pedophiles should be depicted as badass, to be fair.
Yes.
I want positive pedophile killing representation.
Outside of that fact, I have mixed feelings on it because I feel like for Rorschach, even prior to him just straight up killing people and just doing his own thing, I do feel like it's just, again, way too overboard, and it's just sort of the one spot in the movie that I just feel it's like, that's where I was like, that's kind of weird. That doesn't even fit with the realm of like all the rest of the gore and shit like that. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. So then it looks, you know, like, well, badass music video, shit like that. So, yeah. I mean, Jack Earl Haley, he sells it. You know, I still love his performance. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoy the movie. The graphic novel is definitely better. But yeah, I mean, you know, what's also kind of funny is back when the movie came out, I don't know if you guys read the reviews for the film, but there was a lot of 4 out of 4 stars and a lot of positive reviews coming from critics at the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird to think, back then, oh my God, everybody loved it. But
Well, what year was this?
2009.
So it was like
What?
one of the first R-rated superhero movies. And
But also, like, what was the superhero landscape? Like, didn't Iron Man come out the same year?
No, Iron Man came out a year before. The most successful
Yeah.
superhero movies up to that point was stuff like Batman, Spider-Man, some of the X-Men movies,
yeah.
and there was a bunch of experiments that they had in between all of those.
I guess, like, for a lot of people, this is the first time they had seen
like an R-rated.
an R-rated comic book movie
Mhm.
that directly adapts a story as opposed to just like adapting the characters
Mhm.
to a new movie story,
Yeah.
But
No,
like,
it's pretty much the exact same story with a few exceptions.
yeah,
But
yeah,
terribly
but like,
told.
because Batman
Yeah.
isn't just reenacting a comic book directly;
It's its own
taking
thing.
a lot of
It's
liberties,
doing
Yeah.
different
You know.
stories.
Same with like Iron Man, like every
Yeah.
superhero movie is just kind of taking liberties, right?
Yeah,
But it's not the first to do it. Sin City did it better.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, like
Mhm.
it's the acting is way better, and there's also
The comic book feel
Mhm.
is just so much more there.
It's
Yeah.
beautifully done.
it doesn't look cheap, even
Yeah.
though it is
It's supposed
cheaper.
to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though it is literally cheaper on like a tiny green screen set the whole time, and then also the fact that Robert Rodriguez wasn't the only director.
Frank Miller.
Frank Miller co-directed
Oh
it.
shit.
So it's like the intent, and Robert Rodriguez said like he wouldn't do it if Frank Miller wasn't co-directing, because
Mhm.
like intent and messaging like matters to
Yes.
him, and he didn't want to butcher Frank Miller's work,
Unlike Zack Snyder.
who just
Okay,
like
so question for the both of you, and I'll
yeah.
keep it for. I'll say my answer last, but if you guys can make it like adapt any comic book or superhero character, what would it be?
Can I answer this?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
for it.
I got to think about this.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. My answer for this would definitely be Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing.
Oh.
A lot of people talk about V for Vendetta. A lot of people
No,
talk about
dude.
Watchmen.
Dude,
And they're both great.
Mhm.
But Alan Moore's Swamp Thing covers so much theological and
so
ecological
fucking
ground.
good.
It's so poetic. It's so badass. There's some awesome John Constantine appearances all throughout. It is a wonderful, wonderful story that is severely overlooked. And my sister being the special effects artist that she is, I would be so excited to see her make the Swamp Thing. And I think we could really just make something truly beautiful with that movie.
That's a great fucking choice, and that's an awesome run.
Such a good fucking run.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I know they did a little something that when like DC did their own streaming service for 2 minutes, they had like a season of Swamp Thing. I can't find it anywhere. I really want to watch it.
Yeah.
I don't really read enough comics to come up with a good answer.
Okay, do you just have like a general one that you know of that would be interesting?
Who's a
to
hero
you?
that you like? Who's a superhero that's like, that guy's cool?
It'd be fun to do a Spider-Man movie.
Okay,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I could do a good Spider-Man movie, no
Um,
doubt. And like, I think we all know, like, you don't need to be like Tim Burton made good Batman movies, and he wasn't really that into the comics.
Yeah.
Are they
so
good
that's
Batman
fine.
movies, though? Do you
Yeah,
guys
they
think those
are.
are good films?
I fucking love those.
Yeah, they're good movies. Yeah, good movies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like whether or not they're good adaptations is like up for debate.
That doesn't really matter to me for like, and
But,
also
like,
that's probably a reason
yeah.
why I really like this movie. So
It's because
Yeah.
it's just like the comic book, but you know, it was like, but Sin City did that better though.
Yeah.
Like that's what I don't get is
Yeah.
so
like what's the point of this movie if Sin City already exists?
Also,
The
this
thing-
movie didn't do too well.
No, it bombed.
It made $185 million on a $120 million budget. So after expenses, it only made $65 million.
I mean, yeah, there's a
Which-
reason why like Deadpool making as much money as it did was like a big surprise. Was because there was like this movie kind of like created a precedent for R-rated superhero movies not working.
So
Yes.
Right?
So for me,
Yeah.
take a guess of which character or run I would adapt.
Batman.
Okay,
Batman.
which one?
The Killing Joke, maybe?
No.
Uh,
Year One. I don't know. The
the
Long Halloween.
The Long
Just I'm just listing
Halloween.
off titles of I've heard on the street.
On the street.
On the
whole
street.
streets of Bordentown.
I've never read these things, but when I walk around the street, I hear people saying
Long
The
Halloween.
Long Halloween.
I really want
Year
to. Okay,
One.
do you guys have
Killing
any
Joke.
guesses, Colin?
No, what is it?
Bit of Victory? Dark Victory? Dark Victory is really good.
Yes, but no. I would do The Dark Knight Returns.
Oh! Of course! How did I forget that? You literally
Dude.
texted me saying that that's your favorite graphic novel of all time.
Yeah, I
Oh my
fucking
God.
love that thing from start
That was the
to
next
finish.
one I was gonna list off. I should have
Yeah.
said it.
Start
Frank
to finish.
Miller's best work by a long
Oh
shot.
fuck yeah, dude!
Yeah.
That's something where I remember reading that. That was like the first Batman thing I ever read, and when I was just like, "Holy shit, this is the greatest book I've ever read in my life," and it was
Yeah.
just. I mean, obviously, I read better books afterwards, but I still say it's my favorite version of Batman. It's something that I will say, Ross, if you ever get the chance,
Yeah, I'll give it a read. Like I have nothing against. It's just I think it's
don't
more
read the
like
sequels.
I think it's more because like I didn't start when I was young. Like reading comic books feels like a really daunting task. It's like where do I start?
The good news is they're only 20 pages.
That's true. Yeah.
Colin,
What?
what was your first comic book?
Ooh. My first comic book was definitely The Amazing Spider-Man.
Which one?
Actually, I have a pretty important backstory with comic books. When I was in pre-K, I wasn't learning how to read. And the teacher was just like, we gotta hold him back another year. This kid really doesn't know how to read. None of our teaching techniques are working. And my dad's Sweetums was just like, don't worry. I know just the way to get him to read.
You know how to do it.
And guess what he did? He read comic books with me.
That's
And
awesome.
comic books was my way of learning how to read.
That's beautiful.
I do want to mention that like that's kind of similar for me. I wasn't a comic book kid, but I was like a comic strip kid.
Okay.
So I'm in my closet right now. I'm recording in my closet. Like I'm just looking at my bookshelf. I have some Peanuts comic collections. I have a collection of Dilbert comics. I have
Any Garfield in there?
I might have used to. I don't see them anymore.
What about the Far Side?
I do have some Far Side books. Yeah.
So
That's
Colin,
it is great.
Colin,
Yeah.
it was Amazing Fantasy number 15.
Amazing Fantasy number 15?
Was that the one? Because that was my first comic book.
No, I think my first comic book was... I really should know the number to this. It was when he was fighting the Jackal and the Tarantula.
Oh, I don't think I read that one.
In the original Clone Saga. The original Gwen Stacy Clone Saga is another franchise that I would just love to adapt into a movie. Not with Tom Holland, because I do not... Tom Holland's a good boy. He's a good actor. He's not my Spider-Man. He's not my Peter Parker.
What I really love about, I guess, my little backstory for comics is it was able to teach me a lot of lessons that I didn't understand. Like Amazing Fantasy number 15. The whole thing is about responsibility. And I absolutely love the way the whole thing is structured, the artistry, and like I totally got it. And the only reason that I read it was because I wanted to read it before I saw the first Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
So when I read that, I was like, holy shit, this is so fucking cool. And I completely understand what responsibility means. So that's my little backstory.
That was the first Spider-Man comic, right?
Yep, that was the first one. It was the last.
The first one.
It was the last Amazing Fantasy. Or I don't remember if there was more after that, but I think that was the last one. Because Stanley was working for someone at the time, and that comic was pretty much dying. And he was like, can I do one more? And his boss was like, sure, do whatever you want. Doesn't matter to me. and then he wrote Spider-Man.
Stan Lee was truly working like a dog
Hmm.
back in the 60s and 50s. He was releasing 20 comics a month. Like
He's Stan the man.
Did he write all of them?
yes.
He didn't write everything, but
But he wrote like the main Spider-Man line and
Mhm.
like the main like Fantastic Four and like
Yeah.
Like he had a specific writing style where he would write an outline
Mhm.
and basically the artist would draw the outline and then he would create speech bubbles around it.
Yeah.
And he did that because he was like the only writer at Marvel.
So how do you do that as an artist? Okay, so the artist has to just draw the story visually,
Yeah.
and then like so like here's a scene of the Fantastic Four all talking in the lab, and then
Exactly.
here's the fight, and then
Yeah.
that's actually a pretty smart way to do it.
Alan Moore has a point where he says that he doesn't believe that he wrote an essay about this where he says that Stan Lee did not create Spider-Man, Steve Ditko did, because Stan Lee only gave him the outline, and Steve Ditko was the guy who actually drew the design and everything like that. And so there's a very strong point that he makes that Stan Lee was kind of a hack and stuff like that, because he never truly wrote the comics. He just gave the comic book all his ideas and then wrote in dialogue afterwards. But
But he started it though.
Yeah.
Like he planted the seed first. So like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
Like it's up for debate.
Yeah, that's definitely
it's totally up for debate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
I mean, it's like I guess like I would say he created Spider-Man, but Steve Ditko wound up contributing more technically. Like, because I feel like, I mean, drawing is harder than writing.
mhm.
Eh,
I mean, how many times did he have to draw Spider-Man?
You
Damn,
have to
that's
figure
tough.
that out of design.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Peter Parker's really relatable.
Yeah.
I really love how simple the character is because that's like another character where you can adapt and change it up every single time.
Oh yeah.
And the same thing with Batman. You know, I'm curious to see what they're going to do with the DCU or the DC Cinematic Universe or however they're saying it now. What James Gunn is doing with Superman. When I read it was like, oh, they're going to do a younger version. I'm like, well, thank you. They're finally doing that. It's going to be like Smallville the
Yeah,
movie.
and like I don't
Yeah.
think it's like Smallville. I think it's supposed to be like early journalist days.
Yeah,
Okay.
Superman Year One kind of.
Like
That's kinda
early
cool.
like early journalist. Like he just got his job at the Daily Planet or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I don't want to see his origin again. It's like they did it perfectly in the 70s,
Yeah.
and then it
Yeah.
got, you know,
I like the idea of it being like similar to Matt Reeves' Batman, where it's like he's just started, but like we don't really need the origin. It's just like a
We
year
know
or
it.
two after he started.
yeah.
It's him learning how to fly, kind of. You
No,
know what
no,
I
like
mean?
he already knows how to fly.
No.
No,
I
no,
don't
it's just
I mean, no. Metaphorically speaking,
Yeah.
like Batman is learning how to be Batman. I want to see Superman. I don't want him to learn how to use his powers. I want to see him like learn how to stay optimistic despite all the corruption around him.
I don't want people looking at him like he's a god.
Yeah, please,
No, like,
enough
that's
with
a
that
big
shit.
problem. That's a big problem with like Snyder. And by the way, here's my hot take: Superman is not Jesus.
He isn't.
Superman is Moses.
Yeah, that's how he was.
All right.
That's how he was written.
He was written by Jews. He was put in a little pod to escape danger. He's fucking Moses.
Oh shit! Yeah, that's a good point.
His origin
Yeah.
is basically Space Moses.
Yeah, that's all it
He's
is.
literally Space Moses. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's something that, I mean, originally in the comics, he wasn't able to fly. He was only able to leap bounds. And then in the Fleischer cartoons from the 40s is when he started to fly, and they just adapted that into the comics.
Those Fleischer cartoons are
Oh,
amazing.
they're awesome. And they're in the public domain.
Are they?
Yeah, they're in the public
But it's like
domain.
if you want to get like good transfers of them, you still have to pay some money. Like I don't think it's easy to find like properly formatted like HD
Oh yeah.
prints.
You could easily find some Fleischer cartoons in like a Salvation Army, but it's gonna look like
Yeah, like
crap.
I have
Yeah.
a really shitty VHS tape of like a few of the Superman cartoons, and it's just like it's like unwatchable.
Yeah.
But like I've seen a few on YouTube of like like HD scans
hmm
of the print and like restored, and they were like gorgeous. Like I want to get a Blu-ray of it. It looks awesome. They're
Well,
great.
let's rate Watchmen from 1 to 5.
Yeah.
Colin,
Uh,
Am I going first?
you're going first.
Okay. 1.
Oh, damn.
I hate this. I almost gave it a goose egg. I almost gave it a goose egg,
Damn.
but I don't want to be that harsh, so I'm
Okay.
giving it 1.
Okay, so Ross.
I mean, I gotta respect, like, even if it's like a bad adaptation of a source material, like it is still taking stuff from a good source. So like that kind of factors into it. Uh, and like there is undeniable craftsmanship in some of the effects. So I mean, I guess I'm gonna go. T- I, I'm gonna go like 2 out of 5, maybe 2.5.
2.5?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
2.5.
you guys are gonna hate me, but I'm gonna give this 4 out of 5.
All
Okay.
right. I mean, that's not like if you gave it a 5 out of 5, I'd be like bullshit.
Yeah, no, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna. I'm not gonna say
I would
that.
march off. I would march off.
Yeah.
No,
But
no, no.
But yeah, I mean, I like it's funny. Like when I realized how much I hate this movie, I'm like, okay, Ian and I are gonna have a very large, intense argument about this movie over the podcast because I thought that like you absolutely love this movie. And I was gonna come down and just like trash it, and you'll be like, "No, that's not true. That's not true." And like I tried to like defend the movie at all costs, but you see, more like a Watchmen apologist. You're more of a Watchmen apologist rather than an ardent Watchmen zealot. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of people online who, like, if you criticize the movie, they're like, "Oh, fuck you! Zack Snyder's fucking amazing," and blah 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 blah.
That's what I was expecting.
I'm more of just looking at it honestly. If my reading of it is this is a fucking campy movie, to me, it's a campy ass movie.
I do appreciate like the lack of irony.
Yeah, that was also
because like
fun.
a lot of current MCU movies can't take themselves seriously anymore.
I think if it was in the hands of someone like I don't know, maybe George Miller, or Chris Nolan, I feel like
I would-
could do it pretty well.
Or Robert Rodriguez.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
that's
he already
actually-
did it. He already did it with Sin City.
Robert
Let's
Rodriguez.
do it again with Watchmen.
Yeah, why not?
But then again, it could be like, is this a story that speaks to Robert Rodriguez? Because like,
I don't think so.
you know,
I don't think so.
I think that would be cool to see, but I would say George Miller. I feel like that would be an interesting choice. If he could definitely do something with it.
Interestingly enough, Terry Gilliam was set to direct it in 1991.
And he called it unfilmable.
there are a million dropped Terry Gilliam projects.
And there's a million dropped Watchmen projects.
Oh, since the 90s.
How's the HBO show?
It sucked.
I haven't seen it.
It sucked.
I've heard good things about it.
I didn't like it.
So like, is like Rorschach and like Dr. Manhattan, like, are they in it?
No, it's like that aftermath of
Yeah.
Ozymandias' scheme.
Yeah, so
pretty
it's-
much.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
good. I saw a couple episodes and I was like, this isn't for me. Maybe other people can get a kick out of it, but it's not for me.
Because I remember like hearing about it, and I was, people were like, "Oh, it's so politically relevant right now, and has a lot to say about, vigilantism and police brutality and like blah blah blah." I'm like, all right, maybe I'll check it out. But,
I mean, I may give it a shot. I mean, I really am an ardent Watchmen fan of the graphic novel, so I feel like I should do my civic duty and just check out all the IP related to Watchmen.
Don't read the prequel comics. Do not read the prequel.
I would not.
They were bad.
Not planning on
They were
it.
very
Not
bad.
oh,
planning
isn't
on
that?
it.
Don't those like bring it into the DC universe or some shit like that?
Yeah, I can't remember. I read them when they came out, and
I watched like Quentin Reviews did a video about it.
Oh, he did?
And he said like, yeah, and he explained it. It was some weird. I'll have to watch it again.
yeah, I read them when they came
Yeah.
out, so they sort of like if there's something I don't like or there's just I have too many things going on, shit usually goes in and out of my head really quickly. So that I just remember I
Me
just
too.
didn't like it. So
So anyway, do we want to move on to next week's episode? What's happening?
Yes.
yeah, all right.
Ross,
So what's
this
the
is your first pick,
All
man.
right.
Psh, hey, Future Ross here. Actually, past Colin, my first pick doesn't come out until February 21st because of our format change. So, next week, we're actually going to be talking about A Knock in the Cabin. A Knock at the Cabin. Knock at the Cabin. What was the title? The new M. Night movie. That one. We're talking about that. Psh.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Live long and prosper.
So long.